The old saying goes that if something isn't broke, don't fix it. For many people, the first Bomberman on Nintendo 64 in 1997 was a fun, albeit sometimes frustrating experience, but one which had enough charm to make it an overall positive gameplay. That being said, when a sequel was announced, like many people, I was interested, but by no means was I planning to pick up the game day one. For those new to this console generation of Bomberman, the games are typically 3D overhead affairs with an emphasis on combining a solid single player adventure with some expected multiplayer brilliance. The sequel promised to have a deeper storyline, better graphics, more bomb types, and a playable companion amongst other cool features. Landing on store shelves in 1999 in Japan and North America in 2000, Bomberman 64 The Second Attack was never released in Europe, leaving many of us trying to track down an import copy back in the day with some difficulty. Bomberman 64 The Second Attack begins with a fairly standard good versus evil storyline in which 7 magic stones have been used to imprison a demon. Or have they? Travelling through space and time, Bomberman is sucked into a black hole, and when he wakes up he's in a prison cell with an egg. The egg hatches, which creates your sidekick for the game, who is called Pommy, and you begin your explosion-laden quest to defeat the Black Hole Gang and to escape the black hole. The game takes place across multiple planets which each have their own environmental challenges, with the aim of taking out the Black Hole Gang's gravity device in each level, usually by destroying a boss character and then the actual device later on in the level. Essentially, you'll need to make your way through the level solving puzzles, killing enemies and using switches to find the exit. Each part of the level is broken down into smaller rooms which keeps the gameplay flowing, and rarely does it leave you with too much to handle in any one screen. I would suggest that before starting the main story mode you do watch the tutorial videos. They don't only give you an overview about how the game controls, but they also provide you with some tips for how bombs can be used and also abilities which you'll gain later in the game. This is not just for new players to the series either, as there are some abilities unique to the bombs contained in this game. For example, as you progress through the game, you'll collect the elemental stones which can be used to enhance Bomberman's attack powers in different ways, and they can also be used in great effect in certain locations. The first Bomberman game had an extended gameplay by being an early collectathon style title. This time around, and thankfully, none of the annoying gold card style system is needed to be collected. However, you do still have the ability to find armour which can be used to strengthen your overall character. One thing which is slightly disappointing, however, is that the overall difficulty in Bomberman Second Attack is much easier than the first game. I assume this may have been intentional, as parts of the first game were frustratingly difficult at times, but Second Attack can be far too easy. If you've ever played a Bomberman game before, you'll no doubt be able to rip through the opening level in around 20 minutes, including defeating the boss and destroying the gravity machine. Naturally, the game gets harder as you progress through it, but it never really enters the realm of being genuinely challenging. It depends on how you look at this though, because these days I much prefer games like this, which I can play non-stop without becoming stuck. But for its short time length, the entire single player mode would certainly have been a letdown for those hoping for a longer experience. A unique twist not found in the first game is the inclusion of Pommy. That's a Kirby-esque sidekick you can see following you around on the screen. To add some depth to the game and a somewhat RPG element, Hudson included this as an additional character on screen, and this can be controlled either by the computer AI or by a friend. However, this really never enters the true co-op experience due to the character's limited abilities. The main use in the story mode is that Pommy will occasionally interfere with your enemies, giving you time to attack, or in some cases Pommy will even stun them. There was due to be some depth with this by the way of being able to control and upgrade Pommy by feeding it fruit, sweets and meats, and so on. However, I found little effect on the gameplay given how poor the AI for the character is. If anything, you'll waste more time trying to fatten him up by evolving him than you'll actually get in benefit from his upgrades. This is the kind of character you'd give to a friend to control who never plays video games, or an annoying younger brother for example. It adds so little to the gameplay and really could have been taken out of the game entirely without anyone really caring. As you progress through the game, you'll also have the ability to visit the shop to spend your hard-earned currency. This allows you to buy new multiplayer levels, accessories for your creator character, or hints in the main game. The hint system was especially useful for anyone getting stuck, but these days the internet will tell you everything you need to know. Reviewers of the time noted the game's blurry visuals, poor frame rate, and overall lack of inspired design. Personally, however, I really dig the overall presentation in the game. I loved how each of the planets you visit does feel genuinely alive, with lots happening and destructible environments. I thought that the level design was also superb, with some fast, fluid gameplay, in part due to the well laid out and cleverly designed levels. Whilst you do not have the ability to move the camera as you did in the first game, the camera this time around does the job very well, so you wouldn't actually need to be able to move it into every possible angle just to find the smallest hidden switch. Saying that though, the overall look of the game is a blend between Super Nintendo style sprite work and N64 era blurry backgrounds. It's certainly a unique look which wouldn't have appealed to everyone back in the day, but for those who love the older Bomberman style games, it almost has a throwback charm to it, which I'm sure many of you watching will now look back on fondly. It's one of those instances where I feel they weren't impressive for the time, but when you look back now you can appreciate the art style in much more detail. Now, no Bomberman game would be truly complete without a multiplayer experience. Whilst Bomberman 64 was a good introduction, Second Attack raises the bar considerably to make this one of my personal favourite Bomberman multiplayer games. If everything I've said about the game's single player story mode hasn't sold you on this title yet, the multiplayer definitely should. There are 5 different multiplayer game styles for you to work through, and make sure you try them all because you'll eventually find one which appeals to you the most. Firstly, you have the survival mode, which is the basic elimination round of the game. Be the last person surviving is the aim here. Next up you have Battle Royale, which is a points-based system with a heavy emphasis on attacking gameplay, as you'll score 10 points for every kill, but you'll only lose 5 points for being killed, and the most points wins. King and Knights is an unusual one where one player becomes the king and each of the rest of the team takes on the role as a knight trying to protect him. I found this multiplayer mode to be the least enjoyable as it can become too complicated for its own good. Key Trial sees you finding hidden keys which have been scattered throughout the stages, and the aim is to be the first to collect them. This leads to some frantic and fast action, with more action blowing up environments than your actual other players themselves. And finally, the score attack mode is perhaps the most intense, and it's perfect for playing with family members. The screen fills with items, and you have points attached to them. The person with the most points at the end of the timer wins, but like all good family games, you can also blow up any other player whose points will then spill out all over the map. You can be 2 seconds away from winning to suddenly be blown up, and your points will be snatched up by other players. So this mode will lead to family feuds or fighting. Like the main single player mode however, there are times where slowdown can almost ruin the multiplayer games. This is a big shame, and it's difficult to justify why this is happening. The graphics are not really pushing the console, and the AI is hardly anything to write home about. I personally feel this comes down to the game's engine being a slight upgrade of the earlier Bomberman 64, rather than an entirely new engine built to take advantage of the improvements in programming for the console. It's disappointing, but I wouldn't say it ruins a single player game, but it could very well ruin some of your multiplayer matches. One thing that does enhance a multiplayer mode however is the creator character suite. Sure, it's nothing more than dressing up your character in some nice attire, but when you have friends who make as wacky designs as you, it all helps to add to the sense of fun. It also means you can quickly spot who your rival is instead of having to memorise your friend's character colour. The multiplayer also has a huge number of maps, and when compared to Bomberman 64, the overall multiplayer mode is a more slower, intelligence-based game. You'll need to be more of a thinker here with the map designs, whereas with Bomberman 64 it was more of a basic style affair, and this led to some frantic matchups, but it's really down to personal taste, but I feel that with more maps, more game modes, Second Attack is by far the superior of the two multiplayer modes. An area which I feel the game doesn't get enough credit is its audio department. The game is way better in this area than reviews of the time will tell you. This is a typical Hudson soundtrack. The music is catchy, It's sometimes cheesy, and it does contain some fine tunes. The effects too are also great, and the bass heavy bomb blasts have a good sense of life to them, and the enemies themselves as well as your character do have a good number of samples to not become annoying when you're getting hurt. Now don't get me wrong, this soundtrack pales in comparison to Bomberman Hero, which I will get around to covering soon enough, but I felt this soundtrack too is superior to Bomberman 64's music. Overall, Bomberman 64 The Second Attack is a worthy addition to anyone's collection. If you like the first title, you'll no doubt love this, and even for someone new to this series, the generally scaled down difficulty should appeal, and the multiplayer mode could honestly keep you playing for months with the right friends. With a more refined game engine, and perhaps a little more of a challenge for experienced Bomberman fans, this could have been an all-time classic. And so for today's topic of conversation, I'd love to know your memories of this title. Did you find the boss battles lacking personality compared to the first game, or did you love the ability to power up your Bomberman and equipment in this game's story mode? I'd also love to hear from anyone else about importing this title back in the day, and why you think we never got a PAL release despite this not being the last Bomberman game on the console. Let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section down below, and until next time.